China's social media sounds the alarm bell about India's development as Apple's next hub for iPhone manufacturing supply chain. We've talked about this also fairly extensively on the show. This transition is moving away from Chinese reliance, I suppose, for a number of brands. Apple always makes the biggest headlines. We're talking about Foxconn, officially known as Honhai. COVID really messed them up, right? It slowed down their whole thing. They weren't diversified. It's like if you have really strong lockdown over here, you can't meet the demand, and you can't go anywhere else because you're not really set up for it. And it really just kind of accelerated the process of going elsewhere. And there's one country that is particularly poised to sort of absorb some of that production capacity. In that country, obviously, is India. Tremendous population, the right demographics, and interest and support from the government as well. It appears to be, whatever it is, it has created a compelling case for Apple, and more specifically Foxconn, who basically is Apple working on behalf of Apple, selling to Apple, whatever their agreement and arrangement is, depending on product. They've created a compelling enough argument to get them in there and expanding, but now you're having a conversation on Chinese social media, which is turning a little bit into India versus China, where you're having commenters looking at videos from assembly lines in India saying, oh, this would be so much more efficient in China, or you can't just plug in whichever worker you want, or, maybe you can get cheaper labor, but it's not going to be as good. This is some of the dialogue on Weibo along the lines of some of this posting about this transition away from China.
Yeah, but it also took China a very long time to get to precise manufacturing to this point, and India will probably do the same.
Well, then that's
but probably faster.
But that's really the fear, isn't it? If those jobs leave, right, in that scenario. So you can understand why you might be invested in trying to downplay the potential for some other nation to absorb some of that. But you're right. There are processes, there's training, there's experience, and there's funding, right? If Foxconn decides they're going to go there in a big way and they have an agenda, they have the funding to kind of make sure it happens if it remains to be the optimal competitive choice. And that's what it appears to be at this moment. India's Union Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology said over the weekend that mobile phones will be one of the country's top 10 products for export by next year, up from 0 in 2014, according to a report by a local news agency, Asian News International. The report also said that the Prime Minister has laid out a vision that India will be a significant player in the global electronics supply chain with a target of US $300 billion worth of electronics produced by 2026. Now, these numbers in relationship to China, obviously, not at that point yet, but you have to imagine that there's going to be pressure in China. There's going to be pressure politically to figure this one out and to aim to at least fight back in one way or another, because this is a massive, Apple's a massive client, Foxconn's a massive employer, and I suppose if they find a better way or a cheaper way of doing things elsewhere, then you might lose a lot of it.
Sure.
So